Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive or if you think like one and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of Xquadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve even more extraordinary results. Because no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO. Ben Crawford is the CEO of CentralNic. It's a leading domain name and internet services business. And it's a really interesting story that Ben's got for us today. He took a 12-person business and grew its revenues 250 times in just over a decade. It's now over $500 million in turnover, 700 employees. It's a fascinating journey. He showed the key move that he made to kickstart growth. He shows the real power of a marketplace strategy as you increase the number of suppliers or customers and the number of products. Really, really interesting. And really what comes out of this for me is Ben's focus on relationships and how that's expressed itself so powerfully in his leadership style. This is a great conversation with Ben Crawford of CentralNic. Hi, Ben, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Richard.
Hey, it's great to have you today. This is called the Impact Multiplier podcast, and you have multiplied your impact. We were just talking about this, right? You grew the revenues of CentralNic, the business which you're CEO of, 250 times in the last 12 or 13 years. You said when you joined, it was about 2 million, and now it's getting on for 500 million. And you've grown from, I think, 12 staff to 700 staff. So this has been an incredible journey. I know that CentralNic has just been acknowledged in the Financial Times 1000 list of one of the fastest growing companies in the world. And I know that you've doubled, I think, in size in, I think, 6 of the last 7 years. Yep. So this has been a fantastic story. And I want to get a bit underneath both the journey of that scaling with you, but also the mission that you're on, right? What keeps you going? What drives you? What gets you out of bed every morning? Beyond the obvious financial success that you've already had for anyone who's grown a business and added $480 million onto their revenues. So let's dive in. First of all, perhaps just give us a bit of context. Tell us a little bit, just a few sentences really around what's CentralNic and how did you end up in the top job?
Very good. Well, as you said, when I joined CentralNic, it was a domain name registry company. It was very small. It employed 12 staff and it was turning over a few $1 million, but it was profitable. And they brought me on as a consultant. And then the top job became available. So I took it. And at the time, I'd just come off doing 2 roll-up strategies, one in the sports industry and one in the art business. With the global financial crisis in 2008, the art business kind of collapsed as no one got their bonuses, so no one went and bought paintings for their penthouses. And so, but this looked like a very interesting business. And as far as the online services industry, where it sat, was concerned, it was a fascinating area. I'd worked on the internet since the mid-90s, and I thought, well, hey, there might be an opportunity here. And
so what excited you about that opportunity? Because, it's a domain name. It sounds okay. It's a technical thing that's going on. What was it that got you going, yeah, this is where I'm going to double down?
Well, I think probably one thing was that there was a big change going to occur at some point, ended up not occurring until about 4 years after I started, which was the introduction of new top-level domain names. And so whilst every country had its country code, and there was .com, .org, and .net, and so on, there hadn't been an opportunity for a kind of introduction of lots of domain names for years, and we happen to have a really good distribution platform. And so indeed what I did is pull together a team went out and won 60 contracts to distribute these new top-level domain names. And as nobody really knew what the potential was, like the VeriSign, the company that manages .com, is a $1 billion, 50+% EBITDA margin business with Warren Buffett on the share register. So if you succeed, there's a pretty good outcome. And so off the back of that, we actually IPO'd. And so we IPO'd as a very small company. I think we had revenue up to 4 million by that stage and about 20 odd staff. But we had these 60 contracts that could potentially take us a long way. And I guess once we IPO'd, that gave me access to capital. And what happened with the new top-level domain names, it was great. We became the #1 distributor of new top-level domain names in the world, which we remain today. But that product segment kind of plateaued fairly quickly. I'd say by year 2, we kind of knew that it was plateauing. So we decided to use the money we'd raised and the fact that we could continue to raise money to buy other internet services businesses. And so I kind of got back into the swing of doing my roll-up strategies, which brings us to today.
Right. So yeah, so you, over that journey, there's been a whole bunch of companies that you've acquired to expand the breadth of services and the reach of the business.
Indeed. So I think about 15 all up that we've acquired over that time. And but I would also say that last year we actually delivered 38% organic growth. So it isn't just a matter of buying companies. We have a marketplace model, which means we buy companies with different products and different customers, and then we kind of merge them all together so all the products can be sold to all the customers. And that does have quite a successful multiplier effect in terms of driving growth. So whilst the companies we acquired might have been growing at 5% a year, we're now as a group growing at 38% a year.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Do those different business units have a lot of autonomy, or are they kind of more brought into one corporate structure at that point?
Well, obviously they had to start with a lot of autonomy, because if you only have 20 staff and you're actually running a business with those 20 staff, we didn't have what they call in the world of M&A a mothership. We didn't have one. We had no processes, systems, head office staff, etc. So a couple of years ago, we decided we had to change from being essentially a holding company for a portfolio of businesses to actually getting into this integration, and we only had 5% growth in that time until we really got into that integration. And
okay, so that was the kickstart for you, the integration.
It was, and it was a big decision because we invested $10 million back into ourselves rather than buying companies. We hired a lot of staff, we set up a lot of systems, we merged companies together, we changed leadership. So essentially what we did is we centralized the back office functions and then changed the roles of the business managers from managing a company like a general manager to just focusing on driving the revenues and the organic growth. And sometimes that involved putting in people with quite a different profile. It was painful, it was expensive, but $10 million of annual investment, it's annual because it's software licenses and staff and so on, resulted in over $100 million of additional revenues after the first year. So it was clearly money well spent.
Right. That's fascinating, because it's been a theme in the last series of Secrets of Scaling on the podcast. I think one of the themes was was this kind of decentralization, like giving people responsibility. But I think a lot of the time, again, it was around that responsibility for the revenue line, and then saying we'll take care of the machine, but you go and be entrepreneurial on the revenue side where you've got control.
Exactly. And you can see it, if you buy a business that's grown at 5% a year, it's very hard to drive that business up to 20% a year unless you change something quite fundamental. And obviously, if one of the fundamental things is, okay, now you don't have to worry about, compliance, tax, payroll, project management, product, IT services, just get more customers and upsell them. and also obviously changes the culture, and it's a difficult change because it means people who were relatively autonomous become less so.
So I have a question for you. Jeff Bezos says that whenever he meets a founder of a company, he always asks them, are they a missionary or a mercenary? He said mercenaries basically fundamentally want to flip their stock, and missionaries really care about the customer experience, and that's what gets them out of bed in the morning. So
Well,
there might be other ways, but I wonder how you respond to that. Where are you on that scale?
well, I guess, I mean, bearing in mind that I've been with the company now for what, 12 years or whatever, and haven't sold a share, I think that might show where I'm falling on that. But look, yeah, no, we're a very mission-driven company, and our mission is to make the internet everybody's domain, and that essentially means that it's everybody in the world, and that very much, I guess, reflects my own global perspective, which I'd say is kind of far from obvious. The industry we started in, domain names, started very much with companies popping up all over the world around the year 2000 when the internet was privatized to help local businesses get online. And we had a totally different approach. We're like, no, the internet gives us potential to be global. Let's be global from day one. And so what does that mean? It's not like we're about global domination. It's more about we're about inclusiveness and just the excitement of engaging with new people and new challenges and new territories and so on. So what that's meant is we've acquired businesses in a dozen countries. We have customers in almost every country in the world. We have staff from all over the world. When CentralNic was just a small company in London, I used to recruit staff, advertise on Gumtree to get the kind of most recent immigrants, backpackers, whatever, right. And A Small World to get the kind of international traveler types. Because I wanted to be the person that discovers this new talented person that's just arrived in London and get them on board. And it didn't matter where they came from in the world. And I think before COVID, we had this this philosophy, again, I think very much coming from me. Let's get on a plane, go to that country, meet the people, form a relationship, cut a deal, while our competitors are still doing their research about, market feasibility or what have you. And that was very successful for us. But then obviously COVID came along, and that changed entirely. So I went from doing like over 1 million kilometers a year of travel and pretty much flying almost every day to stopping, and that's actually dovetailed very well with our return to being carbon neutral as well. So we were carbon neutral. Yeah, we were carbon neutral before all this started. We're carbon neutral again now.
So Ben, tell me, so you, just to slow you down on that, you really talked there about what I really heard was a kind of a bit of a relationship first thing going on there. I don't know if that's right, but it sounds like you really value that human interaction.
Absolutely. So it might seem ironic that we're delivering our services over the internet, but we're building our relationships personally. But that's the approach we've taken, and I think again, we have a quite a perhaps different approach to business than maybe a whole lot of tech companies, in that we do view those kinds of relationships with all kinds of different organizations as being very important. And but now I think a big challenge we're facing today, and I think we're doing fine, but we can do better in it, is using the internet to build those relationships rather than doing it all in person. And everybody struggles. I struggle with doing it because it doesn't come natural. But all we've got to do is look at all the tools that are available for us and know that, hey, this is happening. it is absolutely possible to develop relationships never having met someone. And indeed, we've now acquired companies without actually me having ever met people, the vendors or the staff.
Yeah.
So it's a new experience, but I personally believe that's the game we need to win now.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I should have been at the event. I ran an event last week called the Hybrid CEO. It was a round table of a whole bunch of CEOs who came together and talking about like how, what's the leadership requirement on a CEO, or, how do you want to show up and lead and structure the business in that hybrid world. Most people have got remote working policies and everything in place. So that's not the issue, right? It's more about where's the next level of opportunities. And that's really what you were starting to talk about. And I actually shared, I started off with a bit of a story around, I mentioned it before, but Amazon, right? It's saying that when Amazon came along, they were a bookstore on the line, and people thought that's like an inferior shopping experience to the real bookstore where you can go and pick up the book and you can browse it. But then fast forward a couple of years, and suddenly, wow, this online bookstore, you can get all the reviews, the recommendations, a personalized option. You can check out what's inside the book, all the rest of it, right? You can get it the next day. You can return it if you don't want it. So suddenly, what was seen as a inferior option actually kind of reimagined what the experience should look like and became the superior option in many ways, or at least arguably, right, for many people. And so the question was, well, so often we start with this idea that, well, online is definitely going to be inferior to in-person meetings. And obviously there's many things you can't replicate, but what would it look like to actually turn the tables a little bit for certain sorts of interactions and kind of start to think about that?
Absolutely. And so I kind of very strongly believe that that's a direction we're moving in. And part of that is we've moved our data science and AI team into a head office function now, looking at everything that we do, including sales, customer relation management, account management, marketing, and so on. Because I'm convinced that it's entirely possible to build excellent relationships online. It's almost a generational thing. And because I can think about exactly my daughter, before she started, I guess it was before she went to college, she already had contacted 20, 30 people who were in her class, and they were already communicating, and she was in London, they were in New York, before she started. So it's there. It's just how to take that technology and make it work for business. And a lot of it's to do exactly with social media.
So Ben, so on this topic, that you've created some great things obviously in this business. When you, at some point in the future, when you kind of step back, what's the legacy that you most want to have left? What will be the most satisfying part of that journey for you?
Well, I think there were kind of old models of the internet when it started. People thought, hey, the internet is this world of, individuals free from big business, and then inevitably that it became big business, and then it was big business free from government interference. And of course, I think we're right in the midst of that just being destroyed as a vision. And our perspective, or my perspective, is definitely, look, it's going to reflect the real world, the internet, right? So there's going to be entrepreneurs, there's going to be enterprises, there's going to be governments. And the key thing is a company like us, what we're trying to do is bring it together in a way that, on the one hand, addresses business opportunities. And so obviously one of the things we do is we work with enterprise entrepreneurs and governments, and we work with the big tech platforms. So I can see a multi-$100 billion opportunity here, but at the same time, we're trying to just make the internet a better place. And part of that is our business model is very different from a lot of tech companies. We've never taken people's private data and sold it. We've never tried to impose, foreign content and products on people. What we do is we sell them the tools to build, secure, and monetize their own patch of the internet, no matter where they are in the world. And we think that's so making the internet more inclusive and more reflective of society, and is, I think, what our company is trying to achieve. And certainly in this role, that's what I'd like to see.
It's Richard here with just a quick interlude. If you're serious about multiplying your impact, I have a free resource that you won't want to miss. I've put together a short email course called Exponential Leadership Principles. In it, I set out how you can use the same strategies as some of the world's top leaders to get out of incremental progress and achieve breakthrough results. Be prepared to have your current thinking challenged and to learn some very new ways of leading. If you're interested in following along, simply sign up at xquadrant.com/go/exponential. And now back to the conversation.
Yeah, I love it. Just turn for a second to your daily life as CEO at this point. What would be one or two things which really energize and excite you personally right now in the business? And what would be one or two things which actually drain you and slow you down, and when you're not in your sweet spot?
Well, I think I'm very driven by a sense of responsibility and by success, and I'm very intellectually curious about the next challenges. But all of those things tend to be internal. Mm-hmm. I actually think, I personally am, I think, very kind of Zen and not, and my whole thing is I'm not that affected by the external. Like, that's not gonna, my mood's not gonna swing based on phone call X or Y. And to me, that's actually a kind of key part of being a leader is I'm going to be a reliable, safe pair of hands. And when things go, when things are going one way or the other, I'm not going to kind of lose sight of where we're headed and so on. So I guess I try not to be influenced one way or another by what's happening.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another of my clients said something very similar, that he's really managed to build that kind of calm, unperturbable exterior. Really, I'm just wondering, how have you done that? Right? What's the thought process? Or, has it been a learning curve, or have you always had that?
No, I think. Temperament is obviously something that you kind of develop in childhood or whatever, no doubt. But I would also think, there's been episodes in my life where, in my working life, where things have been so bad, I've literally thought, if I can get through this, then essentially there couldn't be anything worse. And I do think that they're probably the key kind of pivotal experiences in saying. And also, look, I'm a big believer in therapy, and I have a lot of interest in psychoanalysis in particular, and so I think that kind of process, which you could do, I'm sure, through mindfulness and whatever too, of actually examining what is anxiety, what causes it, how does my mind work, reacting to bad situations and so on. I think that's a very helpful thing, and I would advise pretty much anybody to take all that stuff pretty seriously, because I think it does. Especially if you're looking for positions of responsibility, to be less reactive and more and be able to bring more kind of self-knowledge and calmness to a situation will normally make you better at dealing with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I often say, you don't get what you want, you get who you are. And it's something that actually, when we work on ourselves in that way, we find that other things happen around us in a different way.
Indeed.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, let's just kind of perhaps move on, Ben, to our little quick fire questions here. I'm always interested in finding out what some of the inputs are in terms of books and
Yep.
inputs of people and different things that have changed perhaps the way that you lead. So what's a favorite quote of yours that perhaps is something that you live by or that comes to mind often when you're in leadership?
Well, I could tell you some quotes from my first boss, but he's an absolutely foul-mouthed man. So, I don't know if they're appropriate, but one thing I just read recently from Dean Rusk, who was, I think, Secretary of State under Kennedy, was he said one of the best ways to persuade others is by listening to them, and I think that very much is kind of reflective of the management style or the leadership style that I try to embody.
Yeah, I hear that in you. You've got that. You said that kind of poise, and you talked a lot about building relationships. And so I can, although it's hard for me to know, I don't really know you very well, but there's that sense of, perhaps, being tuned in to what people are saying, right, rather than just driving forward with your own vision immediately.
Yeah. I think it's both. On the one hand, I think leadership is taking charge, but on the other hand, I don't think that means imposing it being authoritarian. It just means setting up the process so that you're running it, but then you want to abnegate your ego and you really want to listen. You want to find out, you want to take responsibility for everything that goes wrong as well as everything that goes right. You want to invite and get criticism and so on, because I think the combination of those two things is what's going to make you successful.
Yeah, absolutely. What about a favorite app? So is there anything that you have on your phone that is like your go-to, perhaps something a bit outside the usual gamut of that?
Well, I mean, obviously I'm an open internet guy, not an app guy, and all about websites. But I think one that I do use is it's a concierge service called Velocity Black, where you use text. So rather than having to get on websites and book plane tickets or get the phone and sit in the queue to try and get a restaurant booking, you just text them and they do it all for you. So it's actually a pretty useful service.
Yeah, very nice. What about a book that's influenced you?
I've read a lot of books, but I was thinking about that. There's a book by Dave Logan called Tribal Leadership, which I'd say I quite enjoy, and it kind of categorizes companies by the culture. And having started my working career in a really terrible civil service job, where actually collecting sales tax for people renting out fishing rods, that was obviously a very kind of low morale business, where he would describe it as a business where the culture is defined by the words "life sucks," and all the way up to businesses which are all about empowering individuals and then eventually empowering the company. And so it's a fun book, and I think very perceptive, as well as I've often used it to help categorize people and companies.
Okay, very nice. I'll check that one out. What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
I think I'd have to advise him what horse to back in the Melbourne Cup if I could look back with what I know today. Yes.
Fair point. Last one is, many of our best guests on the show do come from referrals. So I'm always curious to know who inspires you as a CEO, who's somebody perhaps who you've encountered, who would be a great guest, perhaps for the show. Does anyone come to mind?
Very much so. I mean, I think having this relationship model or this business model based on close relationships. I can think of two people, fascinating business leaders. One is Daniel Nagari, who, when he was 27, was the youngest person ever to own his own top-level domain name. So he owned .xyz, which amazingly, when Google created Alphabet, they decided to use the .xyz domain name. So a couple of years later, he had Alphabet, and if you go to abc.xyz, that's Alphabet's main website.
Okay.
Even today. And so, a great CEO, entrepreneur, hugely successful, based in Los Angeles. And the other one I could think of is Bhavin Tarakia. So Bhavin's again a entrepreneur who, I guess by his mid-30s, his and his brother Div's exits had of companies they created and sold had already passed the $1 billion mark. And he's still CEO of two companies, creating new tech companies all the time. Again, amazing guy, and happily both of them are business partners of ours in various parts of our business. So a pleasure to work with as well.
That's really fascinating. What inspires you about them in particular, would you say?
Well, I guess the thing is they're both much younger than me, so it's like it's like I guess I've known them both for quite a while, and at relatively early stages of their careers. And obviously I joined CentralNic as a tiny company too. So I think just the fact that we've been able to stay in touch with each other, do business and deals together, and kind of grow our businesses in parallel with each other means we've always kind of been peers, which is a very cool thing.
Shared journey a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, fascinating. Hey, one of my favorite questions is thinking, no matter how much we've achieved, there's always a next level to get to. So where does CentralNic go from here as a business? What's kind of on your radar?
Well, I mean, I think what people are looking for is, without growth rate and scale, like when are we going to be $1 billion business? And sure, that's no doubt inevitably going to happen the next couple of years at some point. But that's a milestone. It's not really a step change in what we're doing. That is just incremental change. I think just really proving and building our marketplace model and showing that that by selling all these online services and focusing on entrepreneurs and enterprise and big tech platforms and government actually is a fantastic model. And that all of these organizations actually have a lot in common. And again, I guess I think I'm a big believer in diplomacy, in sensitive persuasion. So I'm also, though, a big believer in kind of radical transparency, but I think often that lends itself to just inviting kind of the Twitter trolls of the office to take the microphone. So I think we try not to encourage that, but say let's face all of our issues very transparently and then deal with them very diplomatically. And so I think to build a tech company that has that kind of culture, that has that kind of approach to like bring in all those constituents and say, hey, we're government friendly, we're tech platform friendly, and we're entrepreneur friendly. Hopefully it's a different kind of tech company, and it's one that we would like to see succeed and flourish.
Yeah, I love it. I love the way you're so articulate about those multiple stakeholders and the focus you put on each one. I think it's really interesting because often people rotate on one stakeholder and then everything else is seen through that lens. But you've got this balanced approach, which is mediation and
Yeah, exactly. I think, and that's also a big commercial opportunity. Like if you can mediate between tech platforms and governments and entrepreneurs, that's an opportunity because they can't do it by themselves.
Yeah, it's a great point. So, and Ben, lastly, what will you need to do differently as CEO to multiply your own impact? As the business continues to grow. I mean, how will your role change?
Well, I guess I got to go on podcasts, right? And I suppose that's it. We're thinking. I guess I'm thinking more about broadcasting and so on. I mean, the company just recently, so we've kind of joined the World Economic Forum, where I mean, I have had a parallel career as a journalist all my life, and now I'm trying to maybe bring these things together. So instead of writing about art exhibitions, I'm actually writing about what the business and what we're trying to do and internet policy and so on. So I think there's we want to be an important company, and I think in order to do that, we've got to raise our profile at the and play with the big boys. So I guess that's my role.
Fantastic. Last thing, Ben, if people want to find out more about you or about the company, how do they best get in touch?
Ben.Crawford@CentralNic.com. I mean, feel free to email me. I'm pretty accessible. Maybe not physically anymore, but certainly, always keen to build new connections. So I would welcome anyone who's been interested by what I've had to say to get in touch.
Fantastic. Well, hey Ben, it's been a fantastic conversation. I've really enjoyed getting this inside glimpse into this journey that you've been on from 12 people to 700 and 250, the 500 million revenues, right? It's been a really fascinating journey. But I also love, that heart that comes out, that there is this relationship focus. There's this sense of, there's the commercial side, but there's also, how do we mediate between the different stakeholders and make the world a bit of a better place as you do that. And I think that definitely comes out in who you are and your focus. So I wish you all the best on the next stage, and thanks for spending a few minutes with us.
Very happy to. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Ben. Take care.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? If you're ready to learn more about our content, our coaching, and our community, then visit us at Xquadrant.com.